a report by Human Rights Watch indicates that governments should act swiftly to redress the harm which was caused by the disruption of children's education in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, school closures affected children unequally, and the 125-page report titled "Years Don't Wait for Them" documents that not all children had the opportunities, tools or even access needed to keep on learning during the pandemic. Now, it further reveals that school closures brought an abrupt end to some children's education. So let's get some details now on this with the senior researcher at the organization's Children's Rights Wing, Ms. Elin Martinez, joins us now all the way from London. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Martinez. And I think it's quite concerning that even though the generic outlook was that all children have been affected, by COVID-19 because schools were shut. The truth, according to this report, is that they were not affected equally. Give me some of those details as to what was the reality on the ground for these children.
Good morning, and thanks so much for this coverage. As you may know, children actually haven't really been at the center of this pandemic or the coverage, and so it's extremely important that we continue to raise attention on what has happened to over 1.4 billion students from preschool to secondary school who suddenly saw their education interrupted as a result of COVID-19 pandemic measures in over 190 countries, right? So the situation now is such that even the United Nations has said that we're close to a near catastrophe unless governments change course and ensure that they actually target the most excluded children. Human Rights Watch's report, which we launched today, shows that, in fact, a lot of children were excluded from educational responses in their countries. And these are children who were typically already facing huge barriers when accessing education, such as children with disabilities, children who are refugees, children who are facing economic hardship, and yet governments failed in many cases to include these children.
Right.
And despite the great offer of TV, radio, broadcasting and online learning, it was not made in a way that actually ensured that they were able to access education remotely.
And
there's also a second layer.
If I may just jump in there, because of time, when you mentioned government and their lack of supporting these children, my understanding from this report is that part of the reason was, in a lack of policy, lack of infrastructure, as well as lack of resources that we're seeing here from the government side.
Absolutely. And so there was a very quick rush to close schools, and there hasn't been as much of a rush to open schools. And so this means that actually children have been out of school for over a year, right? And governments have tried to their credit, have tried to deploy all sorts of measures to ensure this. But this focus on online learning in countries where there is, very short supply of internet